People tend to think of reality as being very grounded and simple. Linear. Something that stays one way and never strays from that path, always moving forward. But tonight, I present you with 10 true glitches in reality. 10 stories that challenge that belief. So, sit back, relax, and enjoy these stories of glitches in reality. Just found this subreddit. I tried to be as short as I could. This year in January, I broke up with my boyfriend. I was so angry and was going way over the speed limit on my parents' dirt road in the middle of the forest. I hit some really soft sand and I lost control of my car, flying through the woods and hitting a tree. A few branches went through my windshield and one impaled the roof of my car. I can remember having a really sharp feeling in my right eye. It was like I almost didn't feel it at first because of the adrenaline. I reached up and could feel a huge broken piece of branch sticking out of my eye socket, and everything was covered in blood. I searched for my phone, then opened the car door and just fell out and laid on the ground. I called 911 and told them I'd gotten in an accident and there was a branch sticking out of my eye. The ambulance came and got me. They didn't take the branch out at all, they left it there, and I had surgery to get it removed at the hospital. When I woke up from surgery, my parents were there, looking almost sick to their stomachs. The doctor told me there was no way they could save my eye, and I needed to let my wounds heal. So, over the next 2 weeks, I visited both an ophthalmologist and optometrist, and I've had discussions about possibly getting an artificial eye in the future. My parents were loaning me a shitload of money for my surgeries and appointments, and I was severely depressed and nearly suicidal. For those 2 weeks, I only left my house if I absolutely had to. My mom said to me one night that I lost my eye, but I could have lost my life, and that I was here for a reason, along with some other things. This conversation meant a lot to me. And then, the very next morning after that conversation, I woke up and something felt different. I didn't know what it was, but I also had the most energy I'd felt since the accident. I looked in the mirror in my bedroom and I had both my eyes. I still had the stitches on my cheek underneath my right eye and some scratches around it, and it was bruised pretty badly, but the eye was still there. I started crying, just completely sobbing, and went straight to my mother's room. She was so worried and thought something was wrong. I told her my eye was okay and that I didn't lose it. She was confused and said, "Of course you're not going to lose your eye." After having a pretty mutually confusing conversation, she told me I never had surgery, never saw any eye doctors, and that the only thing I needed was stitches on my cheek and staples on my head under my hair. She even showed me pictures that she took to prove it. I can't explain what happened over those 2 weeks after the accident. And over that time, I learned a bunch of eye terms I didn't know before. I have newfound knowledge about eye surgery and artificial eyes, etc. There's no way I imagined it. It was reality to me. I've had to try to come to terms with losing an eye, but none of it was actually real. I still talk about this all the time to friends and family. I found such an appreciation for my life after this. I've never been a religious person. I'm still not. But now, I'm open to the idea that anything's possible. I am so grateful. To start, I'll say that I've been an occasional reader of this subreddit for some time. I like the stories as they make me wonder sometimes, but If I'm being honest, I don't really ever take them seriously. Never, in the farthest reaches of my imagination, did I think that I would ever have something legitimate to post here. But I do. I'm not really sure how to write this, as I'm still trying to process it. But here it goes. I am currently in nursing school. Today, I had a pharmacology test at 0800 hours. I have a pharm test roughly every 2 weeks. Every Thursday, I have a skills lab where we learn all the tricks of the trade. How to wrap bandages, insert nasogastric tubes, etc. This past Thursday, the 19th, we practiced giving intramuscular and subcutaneous injections. And it's the first day we've done that. All of this is important later. So, Thursday night, I study one last time for my exam and go to bed a bit early to be rested for the exam. I wake up bright and early, shower, and head to school. As we get our tests, I specifically remember looking at my watch for the date and dated my test 04/20/18. We're required to date our Scantron sheets. I take my test, attend my next class, and go home. I played some video games and turned on Netflix, excited to be able to enjoy myself because it's the weekend and I don't have to get up early. I fell asleep somewhere around 0300 hours. Then, I wake up to my alarm on my phone going off at 0600, which is weird because it's set for 0600 Monday to Friday, and I don't know why it's going off. I look at my phone, and on the lock screen, the date reads Friday, April 20th, and I'm immediately confused. It's not Friday. Yesterday was Friday. I vividly remember going to class, taking my Friday exam, and everything else. Dreams have a certain feel to them when recalling from memory, and this did not even remotely have that foggy type of feel to it. So, I go to my laptop, thinking my phone is just messed up. At this point, I'm brushing it off as a phone glitch. Then, my laptop reads the same date. I turn on my TV, and the Dish Network guide has the same date. So, by this point, I'm kind of freaking out. So, I decide to text one of my classmates and ask if we have a test today. She responds with a, yeah, followed by a, farm, did you forget? By this point, it's about 0700, and I realize that regardless of what happened, I need to get ready and leave soon. So I hurry and get ready, get to school, and sit down for the test. The Scantrons come around, and I fill mine out, vividly remembering doing the exact same thing the day before. I take my test and go on about my day, trying to push it out of my mind. After my following class, I came home. I've been home for about 8 hours now, as of this writing, and I've spent about 6 of these hours trying to figure out what in the fuck happened. After sifting through every bit of memory that I have only one occurrence that stands out as odd. Last night, the first Friday night, I remember waking up at about 0430 randomly. I'm a heavy sleeper and usually only wake up if I'm on the verge of pissing in my bed. But when I woke up at roughly 0430, I didn't have to go pee. It was pitch black in my room, which is normal, but I had the weirdest feeling and sensation. One I've never had before. It's hard to explain, but sitting up in my bed, it felt almost as if reality was buzzing, for lack of a better word. Like vibrating or oscillating. I remember brushing it off as my brain playing tricks on me because I was exhausted and groggy. I lied back down and went back to sleep. Addressing some other facets I think are important. The events of both Fridays were not exact. I parked in a different spot, sat in a different desk, and wore different clothing. Here are some similarities between both Fridays. A particular radio show I listen to in the morning on the way to school has a segment every Friday. The segment was exactly the same. The same telephone guest, same confrontation, same outcome, same witty comments, just as hilarious the second time around. Weirdest part of this, specifically, is that I knew what was going to happen before it happened, because I'd heard it already. Not like deja vu, like literally listening to the same exact segment the day before. Only they do this segment on Fridays only. I got the exact same grade on the test as before, and my instructor was wearing the exact same scrubs as the first Friday. Which brings me to now. It's Friday night again. I want to watch Netflix, maybe play some video games, and enjoy the start of my weekend, because nursing school is incredibly rigorous and I don't have a lot of time to do these things. But I can't seem to understand what happened, and now I'm petrified that it'll happen again tomorrow. Any theories, ideas, or thoughts on how to deal with this? I know it's a shot in the dark, but it's really all I've got. This story takes place in November of the year 2000. My best friend and I, one Thursday night, decided it'd be fun to just take the car I just bought for a spin, a fire red 1987 Camaro. The night started normal. We ate some food, listened to some music, and chilled in a church parking lot. We were trying to figure out where to go. We didn't realize we were parked in front of a statue of the Virgin Mary, because the second the clock hit 10 p.m., the statue's lights turned on. It kind of freaked us out because we thought somebody was going to call the cops for trespassing or something. We just started driving, taking random left and right turns as we went. In the middle of this, I reset the trip meter on the car to gauge the fuel efficiency of the car. After we found ourselves in rural country, there weren't many houses or shops. In fact, there weren't even any streetlights. After driving a bit more, my buddy noticed that the houses on the side of the street were either all dark or lit by candlelight in the windows. We just assumed there was a power outage. As I was driving, I felt the car pull more and make odd noises. I pulled over briefly to see if something was wrong, and immediately noticed I was on a dirt road. Before I got back in the car and continued driving, something caught my attention. The air around me felt heavy, and it felt almost like I was looking at everything through a haze, like that feeling when your glasses fog up. I wasn't wearing glasses. We continued driving for about 5 more minutes and we hit a dead end. At this dead end was a bigger house than what we'd seen. This house was sealed off by a gate. We could see people inside sitting by the candlelight. Not wanting to be a bother, we just made a U-turn and made our way back up the same road. About 2 minutes into driving, my buddy's attention is drawn to the sky. One part of the sky looked like the sun was rising. He stuck his head out the window for a better look, and yup, it was that. He also described the same feeling as the air feeling heavy and with haziness. As we continued driving, I noticed the street is now lit up. Not only that, but there's now pavement. I turned on my high beams to make sure that maybe one side of the road was paved, and sure enough, they were both paved. As we continued driving, we also noticed the houses now have light and electricity. And we also spotted a gas station that was lit up, which we know we didn't pass the first time because I really needed to get gas. We pulled into the gas station to fill up and ask for directions home. The attendant says to go down the road we just went and take a left because it leads to a major highway. We told him we just came from there and it was a dead end. And he said he just came from that way to start his shift, and at 10 o'clock there isn't any traffic. My buddy and I both said at the same time, 10 p.m. What time is it now? He said 10:32 p.m. This made us really start thinking outside the box because we were on the road easily almost 2 hours. I checked my trip meter and it says 172 kilometers. No way we covered that much in that little time. Taking the attendant's advice, we head down the road, and sure enough, it wasn't a dead end. We made our way home, and that was that. The next day, we tried to replicate the same, left and rights, but we just ended up at the same gas station. In high school, I partied a little. I'm at a friend's house like normal on a Friday night. I had my act scheduled the next morning. I wasn't stressed at all. We just got a free pass for the test, but I already knew I was going to go to a technical college after high school, so no worries if I suck. They're drinking and smoking weed, and I decide to not join in. I needed to be up early in the morning. I don't think I even drank water that night. So around 10:30 p.m., everyone is sloshed and we're all playing video games. I went into my friend's basement with a couple other friends and I laid down on the couch to watch Adult Swim. My eyes got heavy and I decided to catnap. My intentions were to stay the night since I was having a sleepover with one of my girlfriends. She was at this party too. I closed my eyes. About 15 seconds later, the TV was off and it was all dark. I see a small red light in the corner of the room. I feel around for my glasses, but I can't find them. I squint and see it's a clock. It's my clock. I'm in my own bed. I get out of bed and flip my light on. I thought I was dreaming as I was still super tired and dizzy. I stumble to my desk and find my glasses. It's 2:30 a.m. I was out for 4 hours? I checked my phone. No calls since 6 p.m. the day before. No texts. I check Facebook and no messages from last night. I call up my girlfriend and they say they're still partying. She said, "You told everyone that you were going to head home to get some rest." She also asked me if I was okay, that I seemed a bit upset and wanted to make sure I wasn't mad at her. The other weird things. We have dogs and a loud front door. The dogs would have barked and woken my dad up, and he would have gotten upset at me for waking the house up. Our floor is super creaky. I have to walk past my dad's room to get to mine, and he's a very light sleeper, so if no dogs barked, he would still wake up. I have windows, but they're fairly high up. I would have needed a ladder to get in, and there's a screen in the window that I didn't even know that I could take out. I couldn't drive and was about 3 miles from home, and it was in the middle of winter. I'd never driven a car before this time, so no way that would be possible. There's no public transit. It's a small farmer town, so I couldn't have taken a bus. There's not even taxis. I was in thin cloth shoes. I think my feet would have gotten frostbite if I walked 3 miles. The only thing I could think of is that someone from the party drove me home, but everyone was drunk and only one friend had a car. I googled it the next morning after I got some sleep, and someone mentioned that I could have been drugged and raped and to get a rape kit done. This makes the most logical sense, but I didn't drink anything, not even water. I've never sleptwalked, according to my friend, and I was wide awake when I told her I was going to leave to get rest. I just seemed upset about something. I can't take anyone's word for it since they were drunk and or stoned. You'd think I'd make a lot of noise getting into my house. I walked to the living room at about 8 a.m. and my dad was shocked. He had no idea I came home last night. Nothing like this has happened before or after this event. I also kind of thought it was the stress from having to take the act the next morning, but I really didn't care about it. I did well on it, but it was worthless since I enrolled into a technical school. No idea what happened that night. I didn't tell anyone about it, and I didn't go to the doctor. It sometimes still haunts me. I refuse to sleep at someone else's house if I'm not with my husband. I'll preface this by saying I haven't posted anything here in a month of Sunday, as I haven't had anything glitchy occur. Well, tonight, that definitely changed. At around 8:30 p.m., I was hungry, so I stopped somewhere for a quick bite. I ate quickly and headed back out to my car as I had somewhere to be and didn't want to be late. So, as I'm walking in my car, I was responding to a text and then put my phone back in my pocket and looked towards it. Completely caught off guard, I saw myself in the driver's seat. I couldn't make it out 100% as the windows are tinted, but it was literally my illuminated face. Same baseball hat and glasses, looking down at something. This lasted all of 3 seconds. I looked away in shocked disbelief, and when I looked back, it was gone. To be clear, I was a good distance away on a flat parking lot, so there's no way it could have been a reflection of me, which would be an obvious guess. Also, I should state that I'm in good health, both physical and mental, don't use drugs, and haven't been drinking at all. Glitch? This morning, I wrecked my car. It was such a silly way to wreck, but it happened. I started up a hill and there was a truck and trailer turning up a hill in front of me. I was a good few cars lengths behind him, but I still slowed down because he was moving slowly. He quickly made the turn. I sped up, and then he stopped suddenly, leaving the trailer sitting out in the road. I slammed on my brakes and tried to stop, but still ended up sliding into him. The next couple seconds were a bit blurry, but I remember seeing the front of my car slam into the trailer, and the part of the trailer that comes down to drive vehicles, lawnmowers, or whatever upon it, came through my windshield. The whole crash lasted only a few seconds, but I know my car went under the end of the trailer, jarring the piece loose, and it swung into my windshield, hitting me in the face. And the next thing I remember is feeling the metal slam into my face and tasting blood. My face hurt badly, and my 2-year-old was screaming in the back seat. My head was hurting worse than any pain I'd ever felt, but I had to make sure he was okay. I laid my back seat down enough to twist around and look to him. He was safely buckled in his car seat and had no signs of injury. He was obviously just scared, as he'd been asleep a few minutes prior to this. When he saw my face, he screamed even louder and started crying even more. He was screaming, "Mommy!" through sobs. He was crying so hard he was going silent between breaths. The last thing I remember is hearing the guy I hit calling an ambulance. As I drifted off, I could hear my baby screaming, but I didn't have the strength to get to him. Next thing I know, I'm waking up in a panic and my eyes pop open, and I'm hitting the trailer again. This time it was different. The trailer twisted up and swung in the opposite direction, throwing a riding lawnmower off into a ditch. I quickly turned around, and my 2-year-old was still asleep in the back seat. I was so confused and scared. My thought was that I died and was stuck in a loop of crashing into this trailer. I know how silly that sounds, but that was the first conclusion my mind gathered. I stood there dumbfounded for what seemed like forever, until I heard the guy I hit telling me to please say something or he was calling 911. I turned to him and told him I was fine. There wasn't a scratch on me, and my 2-year-old was sleeping peacefully in the back seat. This time, several things were different. Instead of hitting him directly front center of my car, I only hit him on the driver's side. And I wasn't injured at all, not a single scratch where previously my face had been hit, and I felt pains in different parts of my body. There were vehicles stopped behind me, and things continued as they normally would after a wreck. The cops were called, and they started cleaning up the accident. The lady in the car behind me finally got out and came to ask if my little guy and I wanted to sit in her car until all was done. I declined, and she asked if I was sure I was okay. She said she just knew I'd be hurt, because she saw the trailer come through my windshield. When she looked at the front of my car and saw my windshield still intact, she too was dumbfounded. I don't know if this was a glitch, a divine intervention, or a coincidence. Did my mind simply fill in the blanks and she perceived the accident differently than what actually happened? I don't know, but I'm very thankful my baby and I are both unharmed. I don't think there's any proof I can post pictorially, but the facts of this experience were verified independently. It's probably one of the weirdest things I've personally seen someone experience. My dad is a very straightforward guy. He's a paranormal believer, but not a kook. About 6 years ago, he and my mom went over to Scotland on holiday. They had a vested interest in going there because my dad wanted to find a field he'd seen years before with a friend. He remembered feeling very conflicted about this field, but not sure why. He couldn't remember where it was or even what part of the country, but they took time to just drive around. At some point, he gets this kind of glassy look. He tells my mom, "It's up about a mile, on the right." They drive in silence, and sure enough, there's a turnoff. He pulls in, parks, and walks toward this completely nondescript field in the middle of the countryside. Walks to a patch of grass near the only boulder on the entire field, and sits down. He touches the ground and calmly tells my mom, "This is where I died." He proceeds to tell her, in great detail, that he used to live near here, and that this field is where he was fighting with the Scots in one of the last battles they had with the Jacobites. He tells her he ran out with a bunch of other men, but the opposing side had horses. He was cleaved in the chest by a man on horseback, and he died here, at this spot. He then dissolves into tears, and they spend about 3 hours there before he can gather the strength to leave. On the way out, he points out a line of trees on the other side of the field. Those weren't there. Everything else is the same, but those are new. They end up going on to another town and finishing up the vacation. They get back home, and he starts remembering more. He remembers his house, his family, his kids. He remembers his name. A couple of years later, they go back to that field, and it's become a historical site. It's the site of the Battle of Culloden Moor. That field was the site of one of the largest and most defining battles in that uprising. While they're there, they consult one of the guides about details my dad remembers. The guide confirms that the trees are new, and a few other details he seemed surprised my dad knows. They consult historical records somewhere, I can't remember which town, and what do you know? They find the name my dad remembers. He did exist, and was in fact killed by cleaving at Culloden Moor. He left behind a wife and children. So, what do I think about it? I'm a skeptic. I don't really believe much anymore, but telling that story, telling people how he died, it kills him. He gets choked up. It's deeply, deeply distressing to him. I have no reason to think it's a confabulation. Recently, he found a photo of his old house. My mom had to show it to me. Looking at it upsets him too much. In the end, all I can say is I think it's one of the most bizarre things I've ever been a part of, and it gives me hope that maybe we do get a second, third, etc. chance. "8 years ago, I was living in a 2-bedroom apartment by myself with 2 cats. I had a girlfriend, who I'll call Elsa for this story, who lived 45 minutes away on our college campus. Most weekends, she would drive into town and stay at my place until she had class again on Monday. We did regular things, as we didn't get much time to see each other. We liked to spend time alone together, watching movies, playing games, or the like. Please keep in mind that neither of us were drug or alcohol users. I have a good job I can't risk losing, and she just simply never cared for intoxicants. And neither of us were on any medication. So, here's the scene. It's Saturday night, 11 p.m. Elsa and I are sitting on the couch watching a movie. Can't remember which. We're dressed, sober, and alert, as we slept in that morning and had plenty of sleep. We're chatting, laughing, and talking, and the TV is illuminating our immediate area, and I kept the light on in the kitchen to provide some ambient light for the living room as well. My cats are asleep in their favorite chair, and all is well. Everyone is safe and comfortable. Suddenly, without any kind of warning, the jump, as I've come to call it, happened. You know when you're watching dialogue in a movie and they're using 2 cameras to film? When they switch from camera to capture the one speaking, it's seamless? With no clipping, interruption, fading, or transition effects? It was that sudden. We were having a good time together in the living room when, in an instant, I found myself sitting on the foot of my bed, clothes removed, in the dark. For about half a second, a million thoughts entered my mind. Had something fallen off the wall and hit my head? Did I have a seizure? Was I dreaming the whole time? Where's Elsa? And the scary part. I turned to my right, and Elsa's also sitting on the foot of the bed next to me, clothes removed, her eyes the size of golf balls, and she's trembling. I realize I am as well. I try to speak to her and ask if something happened, but I'm so frightened that I only stutter. After looking around the room and realizing we're alive, she managed to ask me what happened. I didn't want to answer in case it was just me, and I didn't want to come off as nuts. I just looked at her. After a pause, she started asking me again if I'd turned off the lights or removed our clothes, or if I knew what was going on. I didn't. Neither of us had experienced grogginess or confusion before the event, and furthermore, we didn't experience any sensations other than fear and confusion after it. No aches or pains, no bumps, bruises, or cuts. I reached for my phone to call my mom and see if a doctor would be appropriate, and I noticed that it's not 11 p.m. anymore. Now it's 3 a.m. In that sudden instant, that instantaneous change of scene, 4 hours had passed. Everything in the house had been turned off, and we'd been stripped. We went to the ER as my mom's fear was a gas leak. No signs of toxins or injury were found on either of us. Elsa made an appointment for a CAT scan, which also came back as expected. I explored possibilities like a gas leak, poisoned consumer goods like our soda or fast food, neurological malfunctions, and more, but the only thing that's always bothered me was the fact that Elsa and I lost and acquired the time at the exact same instance, 4 hours apart. Neither of us witnessed anything the other didn't, and there were no lingering effects. For weeks I kept bringing it up to her, just hoping one of us would remember something. I browsed forums from all types of sites searching for answers. Every time I brought it up, Elsa would get scared at the memory and beg me to just let it go. I couldn't. I'm no writer, so I'm sure I left some things out that would have been helpful in understanding the magnitude and surrealism of this event and how it affected Elsa and I. Please, if you've read this much and you have a question, clarification, or even a theory, I've been waiting 8 years to hear it. Somebody, tell me what happened to me. Let me begin by saying I was born in 1998. So, this is by far the weirdest experience I've ever had. I'm not much of a dreamer, but when I do dream, it's usually very lucid and memorable. So I had a dream that my mother was alone in a really old, poor-looking house with my newborn sister and was waiting for my dad to get home. It was dark out, and my mother was anxious waiting at the door, hoping my father would show up. The house was a one-room structure with only 4 or 5 candles illuminating it. I was casually talking to my mother, saying it's all okay, and just reassuring her that everything was all right. Suddenly, my mother looked at me and was thanking me for being with her while she was alone and protecting her. Next thing I know, I wake up. I thought it was an odd dream, but didn't think much of it after I showered and went to work. Fast forward 3 days, and it's a Friday night, and my parents and I are outside in my front yard sitting around a fire talking, and my parents began to joke about how my mother used to pop my father's bike tires when they lived in Mexico. My parents are Mexican and came to the US in 1995. I asked what the story was behind that, and they began to explain to me that back when my sister was born in 1991, they lived in an old shack in a poor part of a small town in Mexico for a year. My father had the habit of going out on his bike with friends to drink and not coming home until the next morning, so my mother would pop the tires on his bike so he wouldn't leave. I laughed and didn't think much else about it until they continued on. My mother said she'd be terrified of being home alone in the tiny house because they lived in an alley known as Alley of the Weeping Woman. For those unfamiliar, the Weeping Woman is an urban legend in Mexico about a ghost woman who roams areas of Mexico and even parts of the United States weeping for her missing kids. So naturally, an alley named after the ghost is going to be terrifying as fuck. My mother continued on saying how terrified she was in that house alone and would wait praying for my father to come home. My father then made a joke saying something along the lines of, "Why did you want me there? You claimed your guardian angel was protecting you." At this point, I thought, okay, what the fuck? So I asked my mom more, and she told me that she was one night visited by a man who seemingly came out of the wall, but she felt comfort and familiarity around him. He sat and spoke to her, reassuring her it was okay, before the man seemingly walked back into the wall. My mother said that after this, she felt a strong calmness and was no longer afraid of being there. This tripped me out considering I was born in 1998, and I'd never heard a thing about my mother's story until after I had that dream. I'm not sure if it's just a coincidence, or if it's something more complex. Anyway, I want to apologize for any bad grammar or errors. It's almost 4 a.m. here and I typed this in a rush. Just needed to put it out there. I had a dream that I was an amorphous pile of tissue that was grown in some sort of incubator for the sake of harvesting healthy cells from. It was like I was in some sort of crib or something in an otherwise normal-looking hospital. The workers came in to cut pieces for me that were used to treat sick patients or give health, youth, and beauty to people who could pay for it. As a mass of tissue, I wasn't meant to have consciousness, but I either developed it or was given it as some sort of experiment by one of the workers there, the latter of which was a thought that happened later in a semi-awake state after waking up. Anyways, there were more like me there, and because we weren't meant to have consciousness, they kept us in a sleeping state where we dreamed that we were normal people living in an ordinary world instead of blobs of tissue on a medical bed. However, every time they harvested cells from us and we felt it, we'd feel the pain come through to the dream of our life as people, as an injury or just a random ache or pain. Suddenly, a worker came in and noticed that I'd become awake in their world, and they needed to put me back under. They gave me a shot of something, and just as they did it, I immediately fell asleep, but woke up into this world where I'm typing this message right now. I remember the last thing I heard before leaving that world was the sound of a baby crying. As I woke up into this world, I could still hear it, crystal clear, so I assumed that it was the reason I woke up from that strange dream. I found it odd that a baby was nearby, as the only neighbor was the older landlady who lived alone downstairs. But then I realized that I had my earplugs in. The sound that I heard so clearly after waking up couldn't have been heard from this world, so it was either a hypnopompic hallucination or the last thing I ever heard from that time I was awake in the real world. If you made it this far, I hope you'll follow me on Twitter at KingSpookCreepy.